Welcome to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm Drew's co-host, entertainment writer Jim Hill, and he and I are recording the show on Friday, August 28th. Kind of a sad note to start the show on, Drew. Did you see the news about Joe Ruby?
I did. It probably hits you harder than it hits me, Jim, because you were a Hanna-Barbera super fan watching the show in your underoos back in the day.
Sadly, this was before there were underoos. I was, however, wearing clothes. But
okay,
yes,
good.
Joe Ruby, along with his partner Ken Spears, created dozens of Saturday morning TV shows for Hanna-Barbera, and eventually with their own animation studio, Ruby Spears. Sadly, Joe passed away this past Wednesday, August 26th, dying of natural causes at the age of 86 in his home in Westlake, California. We just talked about the Warner's Animation Scooby-Doo movie. They did make a point of crediting Joe and Ken for creating Scooby-Doo, right?
I believe so. I mean, there are so many Easter eggs in that thing. I mean, we talked to the director, who is really great, but I'm sure you could pick out more Easter eggs than I could. But they really did have a reverence for that material, and I think it came through in the movie. In a big way. Yeah.
I mean, it used to be forever. It was like if something was, came out of Hanna-Barbera, it was William Hanna and Joe Barbera that did it. It's only in the last 10 or 15 years or so, we've seen sort of this second level of creatives being credited for their work. And, in a weird sort of way, it's kind of the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby situation all over again. And speaking of which, I just this week picked up a copy of a great new graphic novel. It's by Tom Scioli. It's called Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. It talks a lot about Jack working in animation. In fact, he did spend a lot of very happy years late in his career at Ruby Spears. In fact, it was one of the very first places where Jack sort of got the money he deserved for being the creative that he was. But it really does sort of a deep dive into Marvel history. And one of the things that came out was that the relationship between Loki and Thor in the Marvel comic books and carrying over, of course, into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Jack supposedly based that on Stan's relationship with his brother Larry, who also worked at Marvel. That evidently Larry was this really sweet, loyal, guileless guy where Stan was constantly conniving, constantly cutting deals. And so it's like, I don't think I'm going to watch a Thor movie quite the same way anymore. Sort of look at Loki and is he wearing a really bad hairpiece? Anyway, speaking of comics, on our last episode of Fine Tuning, you were getting ready to sit for a full 24 hours and watch DC Fandom. How was that?
It was pretty good. I only had to sit there for 8 hours, so it wasn't as bad.
Okay.
It moved very quickly. There was great stuff that they showed and then was very promptly online right afterwards, which was nice. It was basically everything that Comic-Con at home was supposed to be, but wasn't.
Well, yeah, that's interesting that Warner's was. I don't think it was a question of learning from Comic-Con at home's mistakes. They going into this had a very different take on what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think that paid off in a big way.
Cool. Of course, the thing you and I were both looking forward to was whether or not there'd be any news about season 3 of Harley Quinn. And did we get anything on that? Or
no, it was alluded to, but not confirmed. So we are still in the dark on that one, Jim. So yeah, not great.
But she did make sort of a token appearance, right?
She did. They sort of had in the very much Hanna-Barbera style, they had sort of a minimally animated Harley Quinn who was kind of answering questions from, fans and things like that. And it was very cute and charming and very Harley Quinn. But nothing concrete about season 3 yet.
Okay, I'm lighting some candles at this end. Okay, speaking of Warner's media-related news, do you want to talk about the big changes at Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers Animation?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, so Sam Register has been promoted to the president of Warner Brothers Animation and Cartoon Network Studio. And he, has developed and produced a lot of shows for Cartoon Network Studios.
Chowder, and Flapjack.
Yes.
And Flapjack.
I know, but the guy that's leaving, he also had a very illustrious career at Cartoon Network and developed a lot of the recent shows like Adventure Time and Steven Universe. And so it is sort of a weird shakeup. It's sort of a consolidation of power, sort of like the things that recently happened at DC that we talked about last week. Rob Scorcher was the
there we go.
content
That's
chief. So Sam Register basically he's added this additional element of his responsibilities and now is overseeing all of this stuff. So it'll be interesting, and I'm sure that this has something to do with AT&T of it all and the HBO Max of it all. So hopefully it'll mean more quality animation across all platforms.
Speaking of somewhat unexpected exits, I realize this is kind of outside of the animation realm, but what did you make of Kevin Mayer resigning as the head of TikTok after only 3 months? I mean, think about it. A year ago, this guy was the mastermind behind Disney Plus, and if the rumors were true, he was one of only 2 people that Bob Iger was considering as his possible successor as the head of the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah.
You had a couple of interesting stories to share about this gentleman.
I don't think Kevin was incredibly well liked at the company, and he definitely did not have that kind of agreeable Disney sensibility. And I think that, that his prospects of becoming Iger's replacement dwindled and then faded altogether when Chapek was announced earlier this year. And I think that he was just like, you know what, I'm done. I've kind of hit the wall here. So he went over to TikTok. And I guess he left because his job responsibilities were becoming a little bit more fraught as Trump tries to shut down TikTok and all this mishigas. So, I mean, I completely understand why he left, but I also understand why he didn't stay at Disney because nobody really liked him that much. So.
But it's just, I mean, if you look back at the history, this guy plays a huge role in the acquisition of Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and 21st Century Fox. And when he resigned, he was the direct-to-consumer chairman, in charge of all of the company's streaming platforms, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu. To just go from that to 3 months of TikTok, and now what?
Yeah, it's a lot of chiefs out there in Hollywood, Jim.
I guess so. Well, speaking of Hulu, though, Archer season 11. We finally have a debut date. It was originally supposed to launch in May and got pushed back to September. Well, now we know Wednesday, September 16th on FXX. They're going to air 2 episodes back to back, and then these very same episodes will then be available for viewing the following day on FX on Hulu.
Sure.
What happens here? I mean, these last 3 seasons of Archer have him been supposedly hallucinating or dreaming while he's in a coma, and now he's finally back. And I always love me some Archer, so it's just looking forward to seeing this and just intrigued to see how they're going to write him out of this corner. On our last fine-tuning, Drew and I were talking about how Wizards, which just dropped on Netflix, is the third part of the Tales of Arcadia trilogy from Guillermo del Toro, and that there is a feature film coming from DreamWorks Animation and Netflix in 2021, but we didn't have the name, or at least I didn't have the name. Turns out this film is Trollhunters: Rise of the Titans, and I think you talked about it's this epic film that's going to attempt to take all 3 series and create this satisfying feature-length epic cap for the series. So,
yeah, did you watch Wizards?
I did, and it's just sort of like, how?
Yeah.
Never mind the career corner that Kevin Mayer is in right now. How, from the end of Wizards, where do you go from there?
Well, I think we got a lot more characters to see again, and I'm very excited about it. I loved all 3 of these shows, so I'm very...
but at the same time, they have such a great look and good solid writing and amazing animation quality. They do some great animation over Netflix, but again, there is a fairly tight financial box. But this thing had a great look. And speaking of something that has a great look, Over the Moon, we now also have a release date for this film, Glenn Keane's directorial debut. Earlier this week, we found out that bows on Netflix on October 23rd of this year, not 2021. And that's just 8 weeks away now, Drew.
I know. I'm so excited.
Just this past week, as they were announcing the release date, this interesting new credit popped up that John Cares, the director of Disney's 2012 Academy Award-winning short, Paperman, is co-directing with Glenn Keane on Over the Moon. And I don't recall hearing that before now. Do you?
No, I don't remember that either. I mean, it could have been in some of the promotional material that we were given, but I didn't remember it until this week. And yeah, we know that John and the technology that was developed for Paperman, they were being looked at for feature films. And I think at one point Moana was actually going to be developed with that kind of half 2D, half 3D
I'd heard
aesthetic.
That. Yeah.
What I had been told was that it didn't look good in color.
Okay.
That was the reason why it was canceled. But anyway, but John is incredibly talented. I'm sure you talked to him on that circuit when Paperman was coming out. Yeah. And he's awesome. He's just a really cool guy. So I'm really excited that these two kind of titans of Disney animation are working on this movie together. Before Over the Moon comes out, we'll have to do an entire show about Glenn's version of Tangled.
Oh.
I we're able to air that laundry yet, but
I don't know if the children of America are ready for his version of Mother Gothel. Do you remember the concept art for that version?
Well, was this the one that we were talking to Didier about, right? I said, oh, there's a troll in the tower.
Yep.
And you said, oh, that's not a troll. That's Mother Gothel.
Yeah. Seriously, there aren't enough adult diapers out there for if this had been the villain of that film. Though, speaking of Disney-related stuff, when we get back from our break, we need to talk about the news that just broke about Raya and the Last Dragon.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
Before we get to Raya and the Last Dragon, though, you wanted to talk for a bit about the new Disney Plus series, Earth to Ned?
Yes, Earth to Ned is out on Friday, the same day that Mulan is out. So, choose your fighter wisely. All 10 episodes of Earth to Ned will be out. And Jim, I gotta say, I loved this show. I absolutely loved it. Yes, it was one of those. I was laughing so hard that Katie shut the door on me so that she could work. That kind of thing.
Holy cow. All right.
You'll appreciate this, and I think a lot of our animation fans will appreciate this. This has not been publicized, but Paul Rugg, who was the voice of Freakazoid, among other animated characters, is the voice and puppeteer of Ned.
No.
Yes.
Really?
And he is hilarious. I mean, this is by far the most bizarre thing on Disney Plus, and I mean that in the best possible way. And Ned is just an amazing creature, but he's really, really funny. I know you love sort of classic blow up the monster Muppet humor. Yep. And there are these little creatures that are running around his spaceship, and they call them clods, which stand for Cloned Living Organisms of Destruction. And they are little hairy tentacled aliens that do not speak English and just run around and cause chaos and pop up at the guests and scare them. And it is just hilarious. It is a lot of fun. The designs are amazing, and I think you're really going to love it. So, yeah.
Did you ever get to see the interstitial stuff he did for One Saturday Morning where he played the character Manny the Uncanny?
I don't know. I mean, I might have seen them while I was watching, but I don't remember exactly.
There's a number of them on YouTube that are well worth seeking out, but he's just, this wonderfully funny guy, and to have, so he's the voice and puppeteering now?
Yeah, so I guess that he's worked with Henson a lot in the last few years. He actually worked on the Country Bears and actually has a cameo as himself in the movie, not as himself, but as a human in the movie. And that for a long time he was doing Puppet Up, the live show, which we talked about on the last show about, how much we loved sort of like seeing old bee puppets in the background. But so I guess he's worked with Henson for a little while, and you'll love Ned, Jim, because he is a combination of like Charles Nelson Riley and Billy Eichner. He's screaming at guests. He's, he keeps asking Jillian Jacobs how much money she makes. I mean, it is so funny. And it's really great. Yeah, it's just, I can't say enough good things about it. It's there's a Star Wars episode, so Dan Z will be happy.
It sounds like Mulan has to wait. I may have to check this out. Okay,
yes,
no, that's cool. That's great news. Can't wait to see Earth to Ned. All right, technically, folks, this is our pre-Labor Day show. So there's got to be an awful lot of laboring going on at Walt Disney Animation Studios, especially on the heels of the news coming out about Raya and The Last Dragon, between recasting the voice of the lead, likewise new lead directors and an additional producer coming on board. When Raya and The Last Dragon got pushed back to March to allow Pixar's Soul to get moved to November, and this was back in April, both you and I are fans of Paul Briggs, who was making his directorial debut in this movie, and I think I commented that, oh, good, so Paul will have a little more time to work on the movie. And you mentioned, somewhat discreetly, it's like, well, they could probably use extra time. I've been hearing that they've been having some story issues. But as you learned this week, this isn't like a change that was made last week. This change of team or additional players on the team happened as far back as fall of last year?
Yeah, it happened right after that announcement that Carlos Lopez Estrada was joining Walt Disney Animation Studios. And at that point, and if you go and reread that press release, it's like he's developing a new project. But he really wasn't developing a new project because he was, but then he was shifted pretty quickly to Raya. And from what I understand, he and Don Hall just have a really wonderful take on this character. That was a complete 180 from what they had. So I think that is what necessitated the casting change, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay. But you and I both are huge fans of Don Hall, and we love the 2011 Big Hero 6. I mean, that is just wonderful. And obviously his partnership with Chris Williams and what they were able to do on Big Hero 6 and co-directing Moana. But I have some good news, which is that, Paul Briggs has been sort of demoted to a co-director, which can mean any number of things in an animated movie. But Dean Wellens, who was the other co-director and who has had like the rawest deal at Walt Disney Animation Studios, I feel like, because you remember his great space race concept that was both picked up and then rejected quite unfairly. He's still at the studio. So this is not something like Brenda Chapman where like she's gone from Pixar, completely when she gets let go of Brave. He's still there. He's still working. He's still part of the Brain Trust or the Story Trust or whatever they call it. It's not a great situation, but I think maybe it'll end up being for the best for everybody.
When the story dropped this week, there was all this supposition about, okay, so this has to be related to the coronavirus, that Disney's producing this film with a lot of its artists remotely, and so that's why you need to bring in, a Peter Del Vecchio to help out an Osnat Schur, for producing. Likewise, bringing in two pairs of directors. Because think about it, the last time this happened was Moana, right? When we saw...
That's the last time it's happened since Great Mouse Detective, and there's been more than two, I think, right?
Yeah.
Well, we should say that, like, Great Mouse Detective was the last movie where the directors were directing individual segments of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, it just, in fact, that's what's kind of interesting to have Ron and John talk about that film. Just like, oh, you do this, you do that, you do, but again, that was also, during the time when Jeffrey and Michael were basically breathing down their necks, like, yeah, maybe we'll make another one.
Well, wasn't Bernie directed part of that movie too?
Oh,
And,
yeah. I still love that film.
Oh, I love it too.
The first time in years that you could look at a film and it's like people who actually went to go see Spielberg and Lucasfilms made an animated feature. It's just sort of like, oh, okay. Back to Raya. What do you make of the news about swapping, Cassie Steele being replaced as the voice of the title character and bringing in Rose Tico herself, Kelly Marie Tran?
We love Rose Tico. We love her. Yeah, I mean, I think again it came along with this reinterpretation of the movie and the main character that Don and Carlos were presenting, and was so warmly received by Walt Disney Animation Studio brass and Jennifer Lee in particular. I think so. I think that Kelly Marie just had a more succinct sort of idea of the character, and her voice matched with that character better. I'm very curious to see how much of the stuff that we saw at D23 last year will be in the movie, or how different it will be, because I hope to God that they keep that dragon design for the Awkwafina character, because that is like my favorite dragon I've ever seen on screen.
It's a great design, though. Tuk Tuk, the whatever it is that Raya rides, which is supposed to be a combination of a fuzzy bear and an armadillo and a bug. I heard Consumer Products really likes this.
Yeah, that's actually based on some kind of ancient mythological creature. It's not a Disney animation invention, so it's kind of fun that they're bringing that to the mainstream. But I mean, you brought up that Peter's in charge now too, and I think that Osnat is a brilliant producer, and I think she's handling the kind of like Asian sort of collective, the sensitivities and the kind of cultural group and all that for Raya, like she did on Moana, right? And that Peter is probably brought in to be the taskmaster and keep the train on the tracks, because you watch Into the Unknown and you just see him being so cool and so level-headed while dealing with this like impossible situation, right?
It's so interesting you bring up Into the Unknown, because I want to say it's in either the second or the second to last or the last, and they show Peter coming into work, and I guess it's ahead of one more screening, and the poor guy just looks exhausted. What's so brave about Into the Unknown is they actually pop the hood and show how, when that thing starts, they're 6 months out from the film being released to theaters, and they still don't know what it is in the Enchanted Forest that's calling to Elsa. A minor thing in the story, barely worth noticing. And, they still have to make all these tough calls and still have to make the fine-tuning on individual character performances and scenes, but still deliver a satisfying movie. And Peter, just in the shot, just looks, he's almost asleep on his feet. And it's just... And the notion of, oh boy, and you just finished Frozen 2 and you get to do it again. Because if what you're saying is true about these people came online in the fall of 2019, they literally just delivered Frozen 2. And it's like, by the way, we need you down the hall to go work on Raya. It's like, oh, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
On the other hand, given the whole toxic fanboy situation, and you and I talked on the last show about the Snyder Cut of Justice League, and I think in the past we talked about what happened with the rise of Skywalker, and how Rose Tico went from a lead in The Last Jedi to what you could barely call what she did in the last Star Wars Episode 9 a walk-on. But there's this, I won't say sweet justice, but I love the idea that she's now voicing a Disney princess. I mean, that Raya is the daughter of the chief, and hell, if Moana, the daughter of the chief, is now a Disney princess, that means Raya's soon to be a Disney princess, which means that very soon, January, if I remember the merchandise cycles correctly, because March 12th is when Raya and the Lost Dragons open in theaters. So that means first wave of merch arrives in January. There's going to be millions of talking Raya dolls with Kelly Marie's voice coming out. And that little boys and little girls all over, North America are going to be, playing with. And there isn't anything the toxic fanboys can do about that.
Yeah. Your ex-wife seems to think that The Last Jedi is racist, Jim. So I would love to have her spell. Yeah. This is one of her Twitter exclamations. So,
Wow. Okay. Well, that's going to make for an interesting phone call.
When you talk about the Raya merch on your other podcasts, get ready. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. And by the way, I want to point out, folks, that there is a historical precedent for the title character of a Disney animated feature for Disney swapping out the voice actor. In fact, Tommy Steele was the original voice of Robin Hood for Disney's 1973 animated Robin Hood. And as the story goes, he recorded the entire film. And then Wooly Reitherman was looking at the work in progress stuff and decided Tommy was really good at the comedy scenes, but just didn't sound heroic. And so they ended up scrapping all of that stuff and bringing in Brian Bedford, who was a Shakespearean trained actor. And he re-recorded all the dialogue, and that's how we ended up with Robin, who we got today. So going to be interesting to see if any of the Cassie Steele stuff ever comes out. And like you were saying, Drew, it's just sort of going to be interesting to see what her take on the vocal performance of the character would have been like, as opposed to what Rose is going to do with it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
First of all, again, Drew saw this coming over the horizon as far back as April, and this is not new. This happened back in the fall, and it's not a coronavirus situation. It's what happens at an animation studio these days. Sometimes you do get in one of these all hands on deck situations, and we do end up with some surprisingly strong films coming out of situations like this.
Yeah, I mean, none of these kind of decisions are ever made lightly, and I think they're always made in service of the movie. I heard from somebody contacted us after I had put those images up from Didier's book about Gigantic, and there was actually a version of Jack and the Beanstalk that was being worked on by Chris Buck before Gigantic. So those images actually are, this person who reached out to me thinks are from that original version. So this kind of stuff happens a lot, this kind of shakeup.
But Gigantic still, there were so many cool elements of that movie. In fact, that's one of the things I love about Didier's book is we get those concept art for the storm giants. And it was just sort of like, oh, those look like great villains. I would have loved to seen those characters in action. But remember, Frozen got shut down, the Snow Queen got shut down multiple times before somebody finally figured out how to tell that story. So who knows? Maybe, we will eventually get the definitive Disney Jack and the Beanstalk.
One day, Jim.
Let's see. In other news, let's talk about Mr. Cruise heading to a screening of Christopher Nolan's Tenet. What I love is that the Mission Impossible fans totally fixated on the fact that this now means that Ethan Hunt has short hair in the next two films, right?
Yeah, I mean, by Mission Impossible fans, you mean me and Charles. Yes, we did. We fixed it, yeah. But I mean, I got a lot of engagement, so, that was fun. But,
okay.
Yeah, maybe going to a movie theater is the scariest stunt Tom Cruise has ever done.
It's so interesting you said that, because today I had actually bought my ticket through Fandango to the New Mutants, but because things ran late at the airport, wasn't able to make a matinee. So the interesting thing, Fandango actually allows you to cancel right up to showtime. So I don't want to say I dodged a bullet, but I still feel like I should go, to see this movie, and also go to see what going to a movie theater is like these days.
Yeah, sure. Just stay home and watch Bill and Ted. It's a joy.
I've heard that. Actually,
I loved it.
I was surprised at how good the reviews were.
It's just a lot of fun. It's what we need right now, Jim, you know?
Okay. I could use something happy and fun, but
yes.
But on the other hand, if I'm looking for something happy and fun, I can always listen to Light the Fuse. I mean, you've had this amazing run of shows lately. So
yeah, we've got a big guest lined up for next week as well. So I am very, very excited. I can't talk about that yet because I don't want to jinx anything. You know, I want to make sure the recording is in the bag before we do it. But yeah, we talked to Giabella James this week, who all the cool Dune photos that you're seeing come out from Empire Magazine or Vanity Fair, she took those photos, and she's Rebecca Ferguson's best friend, which also helps us out in the long run. Okay. And yeah, she's awesome. And so yeah, we've got that this week. We've got Dan Mindell next week, the week this show is airing, which he is the amazing cinematographer behind Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, among many other amazing movies. And he shot Mission Impossible 3, so he has some great stories about JJ and Tony Scott and all these people. So it's pretty great. We get into some John Carter talk as always, Jim. So. You know.
Okay. Well, all right. I know how I'm spending my next week in the car.
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
All right. But
check
on the
it out.
other hand, once you finish with the latest episode of Light the Fuse, we also have some interesting stuff here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. We've got Disney Dish. We got Marvelous Disney. As you mentioned, our good friend Dan Z, he and I are going to be doing a new Looking at Lucasfilm this week. Going to get a new Universal joint out the door this week. In the meantime, folks, if you could do Drew and I a favor, if you could head over to Bandcamp and subscribe. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. That's going to do it for this week's Fine Tuning. Thank you for listening, and Drew and I will be back with a brand new show very soon.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.